all, I hope you guys are doing well. Well, it is a Saturday morning and I thought I should cover yet another topic. I love Saturdays because I get to do whatever the hell I want, right? But anyway, I hope you guys are doing well. Guess what? My niece posted something on Facebook and she was asking what is the right gap in a dating relationship in terms of age. And I thought about it. I mean, I've wanted to cover this topic and I think I've covered in one of my videos, but I never published it. But now I'm doing it for you, Anita. Anyway, for everyone who's watching, and please do chime in because I know this is a sensitive topic and I know that I'm going to hurt other people's feelings, but that's not my intention. And my hope is that I will be as respectful to your choices as you are respectful of mine. So, but anyway, to get to it, first let me just give you a background. In South Africa, culturally, people don't really talk about, there are no rules, I should put it that way. Culturally, there are no rules as to what is the right gap in a dating relationship. People use, they tend to use what they consider to be reasonable or a cultural norm. And in fact, most of the time, the man is older than a woman. Probably, I would say 90% of the time. I'm just guessing. 90% of the time, the man is older than a woman. And I'm sure it could be higher than that. But in America, because, and let me just back up a little bit again. Most of us, we start dating in high school, whether in America or South Africa. But in America, there are rules. You cannot date someone. I mean, you can date someone who's younger than you, but you cannot have a sexual relationship with that person. And I think I'm okay with that rule because that's how it should be anyway. If you do have a sexual relationship, you could go to jail if the parents do not approve and the gap was too wide. I think here in the state of North Carolina is a 2-year difference. I can remember if you're dating a minor, right? Or if you both are minors, I think there cannot be more than a 2-year difference or something like that. I don't know, but there are rules like that. If you can search for them. In South Africa, there is no such rule. You date the person you fall in love with, but people tend to be reasonable as to what is the consent age, right? And again, most people meet in high school. As a result, the gap is about, like I would say, it's about maybe 2 to 4 years, right? Because in high school, you could have a 4-year difference between, like students. So, but in America, it's different. So as a result, most people in America, they tend to date people of their age. This is before you graduate high school. Once you are 18 years old, you are free to date any age, right? And that's the same in South Africa. But for me, as you already know, I did my How We Met tag, and I did tell you there that there's a 4-year difference between my husband and I, and I love that because let me tell you why I think that for me was the perfect gap. We are raised in South Africa with the belief, biological belief, that men mature at a much older age than girls, and therefore when you try to match up that maturity, reasonable minds say between 2 and 4 years is the right gap, because then you will be at the same maturity level. So as a result, when I was growing up, a lot of people dated, that was the age gap. Anything between, I would say, 2 to 5 years was the age gap that most people had. But as you know, like obviously things have changed now. People don't date that way, and also the older you get, the less important the gap becomes, because maybe you already lived life, and so dating someone who's either much older than you or much younger than you, it becomes less important. But for women, during their childbearing age, I think it is absolutely important to date someone or to even marry someone who is closer to you in age, because first of all, you want to pretty much grow old together, right? And you want to raise your children together, and you want to make sure that you're basically on the same level, stages of life, as your partner, and so you grow old together. But I also understand that there are exceptions to the rule, where, you know, like a person can be much older, let's say over 10 years gap, and they would still be perfectly happy. And there are a lot of couples like that. And I'm not saying that, you know, like there's no steadfast rule, right? Because a man can be 60 years old and have children with a 28-year-old, you know, that's just the nature of things. But what I was gonna say is that when the relationships sometimes are flipped and the woman is much older and the man is much younger, unless that man doesn't want to have children, they may have a hard time having children. So because of that, in our culture, we prefer to have an older, like a man has to be older, but the gap has to be reasonable for both of them, so that there are no issues. I mean, I shouldn't say there are no issues. There are less issues related to fertility, those kind of things. So because of that, because of just that particular point, which is the childbearing age, I think a reasonable age gap would be anything between 2 and 5 years, right? Or 7 years, because I know a lot of my friends, their boyfriends were like as old as 7 years older than them, and they had perfectly, you know, like good relationships. But again, the challenge is, if you guys are not on the same maturity level, you will always not, it'll be hard for you to see eye to eye. Not that you cannot grow together, because even with my husband, we had to learn to grow together and grow closer together, so that we kind of, you know, like work as a couple. That would apply to couples as well that have a wide gap. Let's say a 15-year gap, it can work, but the chances of that become less and less. As a result, I would not recommend it. If one of my kids brought someone who was much older than them, I just would wonder what's going on. Not that everyone who has a big gap in their relationship, there are issues there. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I would wonder, because you want to experience, like, go through the same stages. Because think about it. If you meet someone, let's say a 38-year-old woman meets a man who's 55, I'm just making an example, or 45, let's just make an example, or let's say close to 50, and she's like, her biological clock is ticking, she wants to have children, and the guy maybe says, okay, that's fine, you know, like, I'm 45 years, I've lived enough life, I'm kind of ready to settle. But if that same thing were to happen, where that woman who has a ticking clock meets a younger man, that young man still wants to have a great time, and as a result, you know, like, they may not see eye to eye. The other one will feel like you're cramping my style, and the other one would feel like, okay, I'm ready to settle down. So it's important, I think, to kind of be at the same level in terms of maturity, and also same stages of life, and also, so it's not fair to, in my view, to the other person if there's a huge gap. I think, as I said, a reasonable gap, anything between 2 to 7 years, to me, that's what I would consider a reasonable gap. And also, in my view, like, I always assume that when someone dates someone, they really are trying to have a relationship that has a potential to last. So you have to think about not just today, but the long term. Obviously, I know most of us, when we fall in love, we're not thinking, and that's okay. I love that about falling in love, you know, like, you kind of lose your brain a little, and maybe that's fine, you know, like, that's okay. But I can imagine as you get older, you may think about, okay, this person may be too old to a point where when I'm 50 years old, they'll be 70 years old, and we may not have a very long life together, and so that might, you know, like affect whether you decide to get into a relationship. I mean, it really, I think, the point I wanted to make is that when you are younger, let's say 18 years old to 35 years old, okay, when you're younger, I think your head is different than when you are 40 years old, right? Because when you're 40 years old, maybe those things are not more important to you because you've already lived life, and so meeting someone who's older than you may not be a problem. But if you're young and you still want to do a lot of stuff, I think, in my view, you should find someone that you can do those things with and grow with them, and so that you can all hopefully one day look back and, you know, and be able to see, you know, like the growth, right, rather than one person raising the other, so to speak. So that's my view, and I hope you guys have your own views, and I hope you guys comment, because I've spoken about this in the past, and people do get offended, and I know a lot of people, as I said, who have gaps in their relationships, and they have beautiful relationships, and that's okay. I'm really thinking about, you know, like the young person who's still trying to figure out life, and having someone to figure life with, to me, was more valuable. I can imagine if I had met my husband, you know, like when he's at this age, and I was like, I don't know, 20 years old, and he was 40 years old. The 20-year gap would just make things very difficult, in my view, because that means that I still have a whole 20 years to live, and he's already lived that 20 years. And again, this is not to say that relationships like that cannot work. I'm just saying that that's how I think about it. And so to my kids, you better not bring some people my age here, okay, or your father's age, because we're not even gonna be able to treat them like children to begin with. We won't be able to be stern and tell them, you know, like, this is how life works. We don't want them we don't want them to tell us how life works when you are our children, right? Anyway, I'm just kidding, but I honestly, like, that's my view. I want to hear from you guys what you think, and I would truly appreciate if you can comment down below and let me know where is the error of my ways, or the error of my thinking, and I'm sure you guys have something very interesting to say. Okay, bye.